Eddie Howe has some huge selection dilemmas ahead of Arsenal on Sunday. He's just done his pre-match press conference and we're going to be discussing that in today's video, as well as some rumours of stadium updates and also news on compensation for Yoane Wissa's injury. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Before we get going, please do hit subscribe and like on this video, as well as joining me on Patreon if you would so please. Become a supporter for $2.99 or a member for $4.99. Supporters get ad-free versions of these videos, members get extra content, and there's a 7-day free trial on the memberships as well. There'll be player ratings from after the Arsenal game, after my review that will come on YouTube from St James's Park. Today we're going to be previewing the game and I'm going to be running through, as usual, my predicted starting 11, but we've also got some news as well to touch on away from the game with stadium updates and Yoane Wissa, courtesy of Craig Hope from the Mail yesterday. So we'll touch on that first. Basically, the news is that PIF will not be fully funding the stadium, whatever the choice is that they go for. It feels like they are edging closer to a Leazes Park Stadium, but they still haven't made any announcements on that plan, and there are no agreements in place with the council or anything like that about what happens and where it goes. It feels like Leazes Park is the most realistic and desired destination because it keeps the city centre location, it keeps that sort of feel of the walk up to the ground, which lots of fans have spoken about. But there has been a bit of an update from Craig, as I say. PIF are not likely to fund the full project themselves. I think lots of people, myself included, assume that that would just be the case because spending on infrastructure doesn't have any impacts on PSR, so there would be no limitations on what PIF can spend on this, but it looks like it will be partly funded by PIF, partly funded by the Rubens, who own 15% of the club, and the rest will be taken out as a loan. It's been said that this is a standard practice, but I've seen a little bit of a response from the fan base on this, and basically, there's lots of criticism as to if this is the opportunity for PIF to spend some money and for the owners to spend some money uncontested by PSR, why is that not happening? What do you think in the comment section below? Let me know, because I'm really interested. I think it's very interesting to know that they haven't yet made this decision, and we are really noticing, I think, that lots of these things have been delayed while the staff hasn't been updated through Darren Eales leaving. David Hopkinson only came in a couple of weeks ago. The sporting director, obviously it's not an impact on the stadium, but the sporting director, Ross Wilson, has not yet been appointed, which is expected, but not yet done. We're seeing a lot of this sort of snail's pace thing really impacting the club, I think, at the moment. And as I say, there's no announcement, no decision officially made on whether they're even going to build a new stadium and where it's going to be and what any plans are. It's going to be a long, long time before Newcastle are not playing at St James's Park anymore, if they aren't at all. I mean, obviously, Euro 2028 is booked in for the UK, and St James's Park is on that list, so you would imagine that it will not be before 2028 that Newcastle will move away from the stadium. But as I say, it's not even like they've agreed to actually build a new stadium, let alone on a location, let alone got all the agreements in place, let alone started the building process. These whole things have to happen, and I can sense a lot of frustration with fans that we're past the stage of talking about whether it should happen or not. I think lots of fans just want to see a decision made. Let me know in the comment section what you think, but I did a piece for the BBC last year where I discussed with fans and spoke to the council and various other people about what the new stadium should be like and what will happen and what could happen. And there was a feeling that I think it was split across the fan base. Some saw the merits of a new stadium, and it'll be apparently based very much on the Tottenham Stadium in terms of multifunctional, other sporting events, concerts, that sort of thing. Another new way of revenue. That's the whole point of moving to a new stadium, because St James's Park has the nostalgia and the history and the love of the fans, but it isn't very multi-purpose. You don't get many other sporting events. There has been some rugby played there, and obviously Sam Fender's done some gigs there as well, but it's not really a multi-purpose stadium. It's almost like the reason why Sam Fender played there is because of the history and because of the nostalgia, rather than its suitability. So I think there's lots of things like that that have to be decided, But again, it just reinforces the need for a decision. What do you think about the owners not stumping up the cash themselves to fund this project? It could be £2 billion according to the article by Craig. And I'm interested to know what you think about whether PIF should be stumping up the cash, or you think that this is fair and Newcastle will be dealing with a loan again, and that's what it feels like could be possible if this thing goes ahead. As I say, we'll see how it develops, but I think a lot of people, my reading of the situation is that a lot of people just want a decision made. Let me know what you think in the comments below. It was said that Newcastle will get compensation for Yoane Wissa's injury because he'll be injured for more than 28 consecutive days on international duty. That's the rule. So Newcastle will get some money from FIFA for the as a compensation, and we've spoken about it on True Faith, spoken about it on this, and spoke about it amongst family and friends before the Bradford game on Wednesday. It really does feel like the Yoane Wissa injury has killed Newcastle a lot in the early weeks this season, because Nick Voltemade has taken time to adapt, not just to the rigours of the Premier League, but also his style of play is very different. We've spoken about that on the channel. I've written about that for Forbes. Eddie Howe was once again asked about it today. And Will Asula, as well as he's done 2 goals in midweek and scored against Liverpool and scored at the back end of last season against Ipswich as well. He's doing a little bit better, but still not quite there. And again, Eddie Howe asked in his press conference today about that move to Frankfurt, should it have happened, and apparently it was PIF that pulled that deal because the change of the terms of Frankfurt didn't favour Newcastle, which is understandable. If it was £28.5 million or £30 million deal agreed, as was initially reported, that felt like a no-brainer, but apparently they changed to a loan with an obligation to buy or an option to buy. That didn't really suit Newcastle as much because of the numbers up front, and I do understand that. But Will Asula, as good as he's done, is not ready to take the mantle on. I wrote a piece on that, and I think that's pretty obvious from the early weeks of the season. As well as he's done in scoring goals, he isn't going to be that player for quite a while, if at all. And Wissa coming in would have just been that hit the ground running, plug in and play player up front. And the other thing as well, Jacob Ramsey being injured, the other plug-in-and-play player that Newcastle have. That was the mantra that Newcastle had this summer. They wanted players who were able to just hit the ground running, come in and adapt straight away, used to the Premier League, ready to go. 2 that they actually did bring in of high quality have been injured for the first few weeks of the season. So it's been very difficult for Eddie Howe. And as I say, Newcastle will get some compensation for Yoane Wissa's injury, but that doesn't really help settle a lot of things because Voltemade is adapting, because Will Asula isn't quite at the level, and that gap is really being felt from a Newcastle perspective without Yoane Wissa up front. But we are going to be looking at the first 11 for the Arsenal game, and my predicted 11, or what I think Eddie Howe will do, maybe a little bit of what I think Eddie Howe should do as well. There are selection dilemmas, particularly in defence. Eddie Howe again was asked today, does he want to change his defence that much? And he said no. Dan Burn, I think, will come back in. We'll talk about the actual team in a minute. But Malik Chow, piece in the description for Forbes that I wrote yesterday, I thought he was absolutely wonderful against Bradford. The passing lanes that he picked, the ability to create space for the midfield that Newcastle did really well. I think that was the big thing I took from the Bradford game, was how Newcastle really punished the space that they were given by Bradford. They were constantly looking forward. They weren't just keeping the ball to tire Bradford out or just for the sake of it. They were constantly looking to create something. 27 shots, 11 on target with 77% possession. That really told a very positive story from my perspective with Newcastle, and that stemmed from Malik Chow. With Fabian Schär not being fit for this game, not being available, I think Chow will keep his place. Do I think Fabian Schär is ever going to be number 1 choice for Newcastle in defence? At the moment, I don't. I think Chow's done very, very well. But the big question is, will he play alongside Sven Botman? And I'm not sure he will. Again, more of that in a second. And the other thing is, out wide, Jacob Murphy has had a bit of an Achilles injury that he's managing. Eddie Howe said he's managing the load of his minutes at the moment. Will he come in against Arsenal? Obviously, he's got Union next week in the Champions League to think about too. Anthony Gordon back available in the Premier League. Could we finally see him up front with Elanga and Nick Voltemade, which is something I've been clearly shouting for quite some time. But here is my starting 11 for the game. I've gone back with Nick Pope in goal. I think that's really quite harsh on Aaron Ramsdale. I really liked what Ramsdale brought in terms of Newcastle being able to be more expansive, being able to play higher up the pitch because of his distribution at the back. But I think the fact that Nick Pope hasn't done too much wrong, and the fact that he's been the number 1 goalkeeper in most games, I think he'll regain his place. Tino Livramento will come back at left back because I don't think Lewis Hall has the fitness strength to play so many games. He played a part against Bournemouth, he played a part against Bradford. I think he'll be maybe more involved against Union as well. As I say, Byrne and Howe is the middle pair with Kieran Trippier by default as the right back. Midfield picks itself. Joe Linton was absolutely phenomenal on Wednesday. I think he is primed and ready for this game. This is the kind of game that he loves to play, where he can get into the midfield and help Newcastle in transition, help Newcastle physically impose themselves. I think that's what he'll do alongside Bruno, and obviously Sandro Tonali is the linchpin in the middle. That's going to be a really interesting battle against Zubimendi and Rice, you'd imagine. Ødegaard, will he be fit? Not sure. Noni Madueke being out is a massive, massive plus as well for Newcastle. With Bukayo Saka out too, Newcastle have got a real opportunity to impose themselves in that midfield area and really contain Arsenal whenever they're attacking. It's going to be a massively important game. And obviously, just back quickly on the centre-backs, I think it'll be really interesting I think Byrne will come back in for the physical battle against Victor Gyökeres up front. Newcastle's front three, I'm really banking on Gordon on the left, Elanga on the right, although I don't think either of those two played particularly well on Wednesday. I was quite vocally critical of Elanga, particularly for his positioning and the fact that he didn't seem very decisive when he got the ball. He got into great positions but didn't punish Bradford nearly enough. And then Nick Voltemade up front, the ability again to help Newcastle in the midfield because he'll drop deep and create space, and then the pace in behind from Gordon and Elanga will be really interesting. I think that's what I'm really looking forward to seeing. Are we going to see it against Arsenal? I hope so, and I kind of think so as well, because Asula is not ready to lead the line in a game like this, so Voltemade naturally has to, and there are concerns over Murphy that I think will be held back till Union as well. I'll be at St James's Park for an instant reaction to this game, and then I'll do my player ratings, which will be on Patreon later that evening, and then I'll be in Belgium for the Union game. Really looking forward to that. So plenty more content coming on YouTube and Patreon. You can join me with the link in the description. There's also a piece for Forbes on Mike Chow down there as well. Thanks so much. Like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you after the game on Sunday for an instant reaction from St James's Park. Cheers.